Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys podcast. I'm your host, Michael. And Andy, you over there?
Yes, I am, brother.
Welcome back to the ring, brother.
Welcome back to True Crime Guys podcast, brother.
In case you guys couldn't tell, it's a wrestling episode.
We are doing a wrestling episode,
We
brother.
are. I had to do it. This is another case suggestion from Thina, from her amazing list that she sent me. And I saw Bruiser Brody, and I was like, okay, intrigued.
Yeah.
Because I self-admittedly am not the biggest wrestling fan. I haven't watched wrestling consistently since The Rock was on there.
Right.
So it's been a minute. But when I saw Bruiser Brody, and then I saw his death, and then how it's basically cut and dry, but the man is still free.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. I was like, holy shit, this is a True Crime Guys case.
Yes, there really is. I knew about this case. I'd seen the old The Dark Side of the Ring documentary before. I've watched a bunch of those things.
Oh, so good. I linked it below in the sources, guys.
Yeah, the Vice does a real good job of this case, and they interview the eyewitnesses who were in the locker room, holding him, and yeah, I was aware of this case, and yeah, I was as soon as you sent me this, I was just like, yep, I am ready to dig back into this. I'm ready for a wrestling true crime episode again, and
yeah, I know we talked about doing Chris Benoit in the future, which we certainly will. But I had to cover old Brody.
Right.
I had to, man. But before we get into it, guys, I must remind you that you can catch these episodes early and ad-free with bonus content. I think we just talked for about 15, 17 minutes, somewhere around there, Andy, before the show. We always put that at the end of the show as kind of like a little palate cleanser, right? You can hang out with me and Andy, just talk, get to know us a little bit better. And that is on Patreon, guys, patreon.com/truecrimeguys. But here on the free platform, we have tons of content for you to listen to, like our other shows, Strange and Unexplained and Cryptic Soup with Thina and Kylie. New episodes come out every single Wednesday of Cryptic Soup. New episodes of Strange and Unexplained on Mondays. And of course, these TCG episodes come out on Thursdays here on the free platform, but you can catch them as early as Sunday, Monday on Patreon sometimes. Yeah. It just depends on when I get my ass going and get that shit edited. Also, don't forget to check us out on YouTube, True Crime Guys on YouTube, the official channel. You make sure you subscribe on there and follow us on social media at True Crime Guys. Also, give Cryptic Soup a follow on social media at Cryptic Soup Pod. And of course, everything is linked right below the description of this episode. You guys can get access to everything True Crime Guys. But today, I'm really excited about this case. I really am. I didn't think I would be as interested in this type of wrestling case. Like we did Foxcatcher, right?
Yeah.
Which involved Olympic wrestling, one of my favorite cases of all time.
yeah,
John DuPont and Foxcatcher and all that. Wow. Crazy, insane story. Also has a great documentary to go along with it.
yeah. Also has the fantastic movie with Steve Carell and
Yes.
Channing Tatum. So
Actually, I haven't seen the movie.
Really?
I have
You got-
not seen the movie. I've seen multiple documentaries, but I have not seen the movie.
Oh, you should check that. Yeah, that was a fantastic portrayal of that entire story with those brothers and John DuPont. So
Interesting. Well, but this is the other type of wrestling, but I wouldn't necessarily call it fake.
Oh, no.
Jesus, don't call it fake.
not to the wrong person.
But, pro wrestling, and I'm talking about WCW, WWE now, right? Organizations like that, they thrive on blurring the line between what's real and what's fake.
Yeah,
right.
The sports entertainment of it all.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fun. It's like, do these guys really hate each other? Jesus Christ. Are they in character all the time? And we talk a lot about that. And that whole culture plays a huge role in Bruiser Brody's life and death.
Yes, and especially during this time in the late 70s, early 80s, this was when kayfabe, the wrestling terminology for staying in character.
Right.
Kayfabe was a necessity. Like the internet wasn't a thing, so you couldn't have Instagrams and social media to promote.
Right.
These wrestlers would stay in character. If they were in public, they were the character that they were in the ring.
Exactly.
That was their mentality.
Exactly. And like we alluded to earlier, the documentary Dark Side of the Ring, it's actually a show, correct? But they have done a full episode on Brody, and it is absolutely amazing. It was done by Viceland. And I have, like I said, it is free to watch on YouTube, but it's unlisted. But lucky for you, I put the link right in the sources.
Yes, you did, Michael.
Boom shakalaka. Y'all go watch that. It's amazing. There's also some pretty decent videos, some recaps of it on YouTube. Casual Criminalist does a great job. I love that guy.
Yeah,
he's great. Simon. It's his name. Old British bloke. He's hilarious. Sometimes my only complaint is Simon. Sometimes he talks so damn fast. It's
hard for these Southern American ears to understand.
I was about to say, I'm from America and from the South, so I am of the slowest of the speaking.
Can you put some subtitles on? All right.
But anyways, guys, we are going to talk about Bruiser Brody today. Birth name Frank Goodish.
Yes, we are, Michael.
I see why he changed it.
Yeah, should we stay in kayfabe this episode?
We'll do our best.
Right, okay.
Roll that intro, brother. Will do, brother.
Only a few hours away! Abdullah the Butcher! Tonight's the night! Tonight's your last appearance! Tonight's your last time ever to come to San Juan, Puerto Rico! Abdullah the Butcher, I know of your reputation. I know what you're carrying in that boot, Abdullah. I know you got a fork. I know when Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher get in the ring, the first thing you're gonna do, you gutless fat slob, is you're gonna reach for that fork. Well, Abdullah, I'm ready for you. The first time I see you bend over, stick that hand of yours in that boot, come out with that shiny silver fork, and come swinging for my head. I'm gonna get out of that ring, and I'm gonna break a leg off the nearest table. I'm gonna find myself a baseball bat, and I'm coming in there, and you raise that fork up, and when you're digging it into my head, and the blood's flowing all over my face, you remember, Bruiser Brody's not gonna be like the rest. I'm not like the rest. I won't be going down. When you pull that fork out of the skull of my head for the third time, I'm gonna grab you by your neck, and I'm gonna take that table leg, and I'm gonna start swinging on you for all I'm worth. And when you drop to your knees, I'm gonna keep swinging. And when you're laying on your back in the middle of that ring, I'm gonna keep swinging, and I'm gonna keep pounding you. And I'm gonna keep pounding you. And when that referee comes over to pull me off, I'm gonna take my fist and cram it down his throat. And I'm gonna turn back to you. And I'm gonna keep pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding until I'm damn sure that Abdullah the Butcher knows that Bruiser Brody is the king of Puerto Rico.
All right, so old Bruiser Brody was actually born Frank Goodish in 1946.
I do love the name Goodish.
He's just Goodish.
He's just goodish.
Goodish.
Goodish. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how it's not a good name for someone trying to be a domineering presence.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he's Goodish.
Goodish seems like one of those names that like a family got changed to when they came to like Ellis Island or something like that. Like their name got shortened or something, and they're like,
yeah.
What's your name? Ivan Gudovanovich? Goodish?
Yeah, it's Goodish now,
it's
buddy.
Goodish, okay?
Come on.
It's Goodish.
Come on in. It really wasn't fitting for Frank though, because he was better than good.
Yeah,
honestly.
he really was.
He was a giant person for one, 6'8", almost 300 pounds. I think he was like 290 something.
He's a big boy.
Big boy. He played football in college at Iowa State, and then transferred later to West Texas State, and ended up playing 3 years in the NFL as well.
Mm-hmm. For the Redskins, I believe.
The Redskins, yes.
Commanders now, but yeah. Formerly the Redskins.
Formerly known as the Redskins. This was late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, it was like 68 to 71, I think, something like that.
Somewhere around there, yeah. But he ended up playing 3 seasons. Later, he said that he would have easily traded those seasons to get into wrestling quicker.
Really? Yeah.
Because he loved wrestling so much more.
Yeah, he loved being an entertainer. He loved captivating the fans and being involved in all this.
Yeah. So, but his ticket out of the NFL was wrestling, obviously, when he was discovered by Fritz von Erich. He was a Texas wrestling mogul.
Yeah, the Von Erichs.
Yeah.
I remember. Did you hear about the movie that came out earlier this year, The Iron Claw, with like Zac Efron? It was like the wrestling family movie. It's a prolific wrestling family.
I vaguely remember seeing some type of trailer or something about this.
Yeah, the Von Erichs are a prolific wrestling family, kind of like the Harts, like Bret Hart and Owen Hart, and them. They were up in Canada. The Von Erichs were in Texas. He had like 5 sons. All but one of them died either by accident or by their own hand. So there was only one son still left to be like the last Von Erich or whatever.
Oh shit!
Yeah, their entire story is tragic. Like the Von Erich family.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could almost do an entire episode just on their family.
Maybe we should.
Yeah,
maybe we should. But Von Erich gave Frank his wrestling nickname, Bruiser Brody. I mean, that makes so much sense. It really does. I mean, he's been in wrestling probably his whole life, and he's like, I got you.
Yeah, look at you.
That's a badass nickname too. But it wasn't long before Brody met and married his wife, Barbara Smith, who he remained married to until he died. And together they had a son named Jeffrey Dean Goodish. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey, surprisingly, didn't really take after his father very much. Not a very big, imposing guy.
No. And like I said, how old was, I think Jeffrey was like 8 when his father passed away. So
before 10, for sure.
So he didn't have a long time with his dad to really grow into that personality and start working out with him or building. Like he didn't really get to know his father as a man. So
exactly, and we don't really know a whole lot about Frank's early life. At home, Brody's early life rather, at home, because he was a completely different person. Like Andy alluded to earlier, this is a time before the internet. This is a time before social media. So these guys, they benefited greatly keeping their private lives private. Mm-hmm. And Brody definitely wanted to do that. He wanted to keep everything a secret because that's the only way to protect, the integrity of the persona that you have created. In fact, during that era of pro wrestling, it was fairly common for characters to assume the identity of their alter egos all the time.
Mm-hmm. That kayfabe.
Like you say, coming from the limo, as soon as you get out of that limo or that taxi or whatever it is, you got to be on point because there's going to be fans, there's going to be promoters, there's going to be all these people around watching, waiting, paparazzi. Yeah, they're taking pictures, and you can't step out as Undertaker. You don't got the shades on. You're wearing just like a polo shirt or some shit. What the hell?
But in 2000 or 1999, Mark Calloway couldn't go out and hang out for a while. Like he had to keep himself pretty isolated to these little bars and stuff. You could not talk about his life.
Yeah.
And like you said, you get out of the cab. It's like he's right in the back talking with his friends. He's Mark. He's talking about what they had for dinner last night.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, man, we're pulling up to the airport. And he's got to be like,
I'm taking you all to hell. Wait, what?
just stone faced, gets out of the car and doesn't move. Like,
just doesn't even talk to them. We're not even friends anymore.
Yeah. All right, take her.
Yeah, there's actually there's an interview video or an early interview with Brody, and it's on video on YouTube. They show some of it in the Viceland documentary, but it's interesting because he's kind of just rambling. You can tell he's on the camera, but he's just talking to the producers. Mm-hmm. He's just talking to the interviewer or whatever. He doesn't realize they're shooting.
Yeah.
And one of the cameramen says, "Oh yeah, we've been rolling," and then the producer asks, he's like, "Is it okay if we use this?" And Brody said, "Well, no, because I don't think it's a very good thing." He said, because he said his name. He said that his name was Frank Goodish. He said, "I don't think it's a very good idea that people know that I'm Frank Goodish."
Yeah, because they ask him, because like it's almost like a sound check. Like he's just got the mic kind of fit like in front of him, and they just are like, "Tell us a little bit about yourself." We're kind of getting everything ready, and he's like, "I'm Frank Goodish. Played 3 seasons here." And they're like, "All right, you ready to go?" He's like, "Are we rolling?" It's like,
yeah.
So I don't think you said anything earnest in there. He's like, I did.
Yeah, I definitely did.
I did.
Definitely said my legal name.
You need to cut that.
I said my Christian name. Okay.
Just like,
I don't want.
It'd be almost one of those things. It's like you see the face change. He's like, I did. You're gonna cut that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We'll give you a copy and the original.
Yeah.
But seriously, though, in this era, wrestlers, they had to do everything they could to protect the business and to not expose it. You know what I mean? Because people wanted to come and they wanted to buy into this.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to buy into it, and they gave them a lot of reason to. I mean, they really did. And a lot of these wrestlers, and we've seen it even since I've been watching wrestling, I've seen people who have gotten in trouble outside of the ring, right? In their normal lives, just because they were out in public and they had to be that person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, imagine being fucking Bruiser Brody out getting a coffee and some Joe Schmo steps to you.
Yep.
You got to knock this guy's block off.
Yeah,
and now you're going to get
this
arrested.
day.
Yeah, and now you're going to get arrested. You're going to spend a day in jail or whatever, right? But that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying Brody did that, but I'm saying there was probably a lot of wrestlers who had that altercation.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had to, because they're like, well, shit, I got to protect the persona. I'm a badass. So
There's a few stories like that about, people like Andre the Giant who would be out in bars, and there's like every once in a while there would just be that one guy who gets too drunk and wants to step to the giant.
I know, right?
And Andre is like the sweetest man. He's so he's literally a gentle giant. And
Right.
And literally, some guys walking up, pushing him, and Andre just like grabs him, like picks him up, like just walks him out the front door and like by one arm and just tosses him across the street and just comes, just being like, more, just sits down like, sorry about him.
Yeah, there's an instance in this case where a wrestler picks up a doctor. It's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Made a big difference. They can be very convincing.
Right? Yeah.
But Bruiser, he had no problem ascending into stardom, mainly because of his size, which we talked about, being 6'8", 295 at least, and not to mention the mane of hair.
God,
Jesus.
yes.
He's a freaking Hercules, motherfucker. So he was kind of hard to miss. And eventually he became casted as like a monster heel, someone who just dominated smaller wrestlers, basically.
Yeah, he was a giant. He was a heel is like the bad character. There's faces and there's heels in wrestling. So he became like a heel character who was he was there to beat people up.
Exactly.
Like he was, you couldn't bring him down. You couldn't knock him down. You couldn't hurt him. Yeah, he was just this like rampaging, like out of control caveman type.
Yes. And honestly, at this time, nobody loved him more than Japan.
Yeah.
He was massive in Japan, making appearances at both the New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Japan Pro Wrestling. And he also worked as a producer on the World Class Championship Wrestling telecast, although he kept his off-camera role a secret, obviously.
Yeah, the Japanese wrestling community, especially back then, they really enjoyed the violence.
Yes,
they had the hardcore matches in Japan back in these days were brutal. They had barbed wire matches and exploding matches.
Yes,
and yeah, it was.
He was there's video of him going into the stand, slinging the chain around, and he's just clearing seats, man.
Yeah, he has. Like a real chain,
an actual chain, and it looks like he's slinging it around with complete disregard. He's just like, I hope these people get out the fucking way, or maybe he just really doesn't care. He just gets that in character. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, he's like, as soon as that bell rings, I'm Bruiser Brody now.
Yeah,
I'm doing whatever we talked about. Because these guys would plan some of this stuff out in the locker room. Like, I'm gonna knock you out of the ring.
Right.
You run into the stands. I'll chase you into the stand. You try and clear them as you're going, because I'm gonna come swinging that chain. And,
okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
I got a quote here that gives you a little insight into this. This is from Vinny Massaro. He's a California-based pro wrestler, and I think he's a promoter still. Here is the quote. He says, quote, "I remember getting a tape from Japan, and he would literally go around and start swinging a chain. The Japanese fans were hysterical. He was just an all-around badass person. He was literally Bruiser Brody, his own entity. Nowadays, people are like, that's just a gimmick. But for Brody, there was no gimmick. He was just his own persona. I'm sure he could still be going now if he were still alive."
There's a possibility, yeah. I'm sure.
I mean, I think he'd be doing the persona. Because look at like Abdullah the Butcher, his nemesis or whatever. He's still around. He's still identifying as Abdullah the Butcher.
True,
bro. He's got magnetics on his Crown Vic, bro, that say Abdullah the Butcher.
A lot of the earlier wrestlers, especially people like Brody, unfortunately, a lot of them, they were not able to have super long careers because of the damage they did to their bodies.
Exactly.
They did not really pull anything.
Right. At this time in wrestling, they were kind of merging with what we would call underground wrestling. Mm-hmm. That's what I would call it, right? Like the backyard wrestling. Remember that shit on YouTube? Cool. E-Bombs World, shit like that. So the two sports were kind of being merged right here.
Yep.
And the lines were being blurred. And there were certain wrestlers that you would come to expect that from. and Brody was one of them.
Yeah.
If Brody's in a match, y'all bleeding today.
Yeah, you're gonna see blood. He's gonna get in the stands. Fans might get hit with stuff. Like,
yes,
they came to see. It was like a gladiator fight. And yeah, some of these
absolutely
wrestlers, you see their heads and stuff where they've bladed themselves so much, their heads look like ground beef.
Ugh,
it's just
do.
you see
Abdullah
these guys.
the Butcher guys, Google him.
Like I said, a lot of these guys weren't able to have super long careers because they literally left it all in the ring.
Yeah.
To where, Hulk Hogan talks about how many back surgeries he's had nowadays because he was so, arrogant to be like, yeah, I'm going to do my finishing move as a high jump leg drop and land directly on my lower back every night for, 30 years.
Oh, God.
And just completely crush his spine.
Right.
And so now wrestlers have learned from the mistakes of wrestlers of the past, and they know how to protect their bodies more to keep this
as much as
going.
they can.
Yeah,
there's still a lot of body slamming going on.
Oh yeah, you're still you're taking bumps.
Oh you still icing up afterwards. That's for sure.
And if you don't, you're not doing something right.
Exactly. But Brody, he quickly developed a penchant and a reputation for this type of match. Like I said earlier, especially in South America, they loved it in South America. It was like the more brutal, the better. The more blood, the better. And I think it had turned so violent at this time that Brody actually, and I kind of always seen him this way, he kind of turned during this time. He became more of a heroic role.
Yeah, the face.
Yes. What do you call it? Monster Slayer, I think is what they call them in wrestling. In which basically in fights against opponents, like he would fight like the villains of wrestling, like Kamala, the Ugandan giant, the one-man gang, and of course Abdullah the Butcher, who I mentioned earlier, probably his greatest nemesis. And I think it's just because if you look up these guys, they just big ugly dudes, and then you look up Brody and you're like, he could like play Hercules or like a Jason Momoa role or something like that. Like he's a good looking guy. He just doesn't fit in with he's not villain like these guys are villains. Right. And so I think that's what kind of in contrast, it created this role.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's like you also got to think about Brody. He's an all-American college football player, pro football player. This guy was he was on the right track to just being a professional athlete his whole young life.
Oh, no doubt.
So it wasn't like some of these guys who kind of picked up wrestling just because they were fighters or mean or they were just big dudes. It's like, this guy was on the right track already. So yeah, he's good looking, college graduate. Yeah. He's a smart guy.
And it's no wonder that like he attracted the attention of the Puerto Rican wrestling circuit because, they loved this. They loved blurring these lines, right? They had a wrestling mafia down there, basically. And there were three men who were really running shit down there. Carlos Colon, Victor Quinones, and Jose Gonzalez. Now, Jose Gonzalez was also a wrestler.
Yeah, he was like Carlos Colon's kind of like right-hand man.
Yes, he was also a wrestler, but he also owned part of the company. He was a promoter, all that good stuff as well. And his wrestling name was Invader 1. Apparently, he was a group. He was part of a group of invaders, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, very nice. Very, very original. Very creative. I guess it's original, but...
At least they were just number coordinated.
Right.
Had the little luchador mask and stuff. Had a big 1 on it.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it would be a brief wrestling tour in Puerto Rico in 1988. That would be the end for Brody. Apparently, it went down like this. Bruiser Brody had been wrestling in Japan. He had become extremely successful, and he was actually banking quite a bit of change wrestling in Japan, and he was ready to invest. And so when he got this invite to Puerto Rico, and he saw that they're just getting off the ground, and it's a smaller organization, but an organization that he could buy into, and then kind of mold his own wrestling organization. He could bring in wrestlers that he liked. He would also be a promoter. He would be part owner, and it was just a great opportunity for Brody. The problem was that the 3 other men involved, Carlos Colon, Victor Quinones, and Jose Gonzalez specifically, weren't the biggest Brody fans.
No,
they really weren't, especially not Jose. Jose, Invader 1, had fought Brody in a match where Brody was supposed to lose, if I'm not mistaken. And Brody beats the shit out of him for real. Like, he ends up having to go to the hospital. His head was swollen like a pumpkin, according to other wrestlers.
Yeah, they said Tony Atlas, one of the guys, said that.
Yes.
Brody just beat the crap out of him in the ring, and Carlos had to take him to the hospital. And apparently during this time, that's when the first like threat was uttered, where apparently
on the way to the hospital,
yes,
right?
Allegedly, Jose Gonzalez said, "I'm gonna kill this motherfucker" or something like that.
Yes.
I'm gonna kill that man next time I see him.
Yes.
So
he did.
So this is the first time like these two men have come across each other. They have not gone well together,
right?
But I guess after this, Brody still thinks he can go down there and do business.
Yeah,
like he's just thinking this is just business.
Right.
This isn't personal.
Exactly. But Jose was taking it personal because he kind of ruined Jose's wrestling persona, because Jose was kind of the man to beat in the Puerto Rican circuit at that time. And I'm not saying that the matches aren't planned. They are. And that was even a bigger affront to Jose. At least he took it that way. So you kind of have a perfect storm here. You have Jose Gonzalez, who is a big shareholder and doesn't like Brody because he feels like Brody embarrassed him.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have Brody himself, who is a very imposing, very opinionated character. He's already been talking about how he plans to make changes and shake things up, and these guys like what they got going on here. Okay? This, my opinion, is the reason that Brody was killed. It has nothing to do with this little duel between him and Jose. Nah. It's the fucking money. It's always the money, Andy.
I think the money had a big part to do with it. I do believe.
I think Jose volunteered.
I think Jose was willing to do it. He was the one being like, "Why don't we just take him out?" Like, I'll do it.
He's like, "I want to kill him anyways." Two birds, one stone. That's what he's thinking. Yeah,
and the way it's done, and the after effects, and the way that the rumors spread so fast, and how it's. There's a lot of stuff that happens afterwards to make you kind of realize or think that this was premeditated.
Right.
Like this was a decision that was made by more than one person.
Right. So basically what happens is, before one of these big events, an event where Brody was going to be the headliner, by the way, and Jose was actually the main booker or bookie for this event. So Brody and Tony Atlas are standing in the back rooms, in the locker room, the shower, whatever you want to call it. They're having a conversation, they're talking, and then all of a sudden Jose walks up, and he has a towel over his hand, and he says, "Hey Brody, can I talk to you a minute in the showers?" Which this is a normal thing, right? They're two men who, especially now they're business partners, right? So there's a lot of private things to discuss. And so
at least they think they are.
At least they think they are.
Yeah, Tony thinks that he's like, oh, he must have already bought in.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And also the fact that Brody just walks back there not thinking, obviously this is a normal type of conversation.
There was no immediate threat. There was no like, get in the shower. There was no like, well, I want to talk to you. Right. Even Tony says, like, he literally just kind of did like a motion with his hand, like, hey, can I talk to you for a second over here?
Yeah,
like,
just
real calm.
Yeah, real calm. And so the two walk around the wall into the showers, and this is from Tony Atlas. And then Tony says that he hears kind of like a grunt, like a almost like somebody had got punched in the gut.
Yeah.
And when he looked up over there, Brody was hunched over, and so that's exactly what he thought. And he was like, "Oh shit!" He was like, "Jose just punched Brody. There's about to be a fight in here."
Yeah.
And he runs over there to break him up, and he realizes that Jose has a knife in his hand. And he's trying to slice Brody's throat.
He hears the first like stab, like and he
hears another one, right?
Yeah, and then he's like, then he says he hears another one, and that's when he's running over there to grab him, and he sees Jose's like hand come up with the knife.
Yep,
and he grabs Brody around the waist like to pull back.
Yes, and Tony Atlas says, this is crazy. He says that he slung the knife. Jose did. He swung the knife trying to hit Brody in the throat. And when Atlas pulled him away, he hit Brody's ponytail and cut it clean off, allegedly. That's a sharp-ass knife.
Yeah, because he pulled him to where he ducked down so fast that the knife just went across and like just cut like almost like his bun off, like just off
That's
the top
insane.
Of his head. Yeah.
That's absolutely insane. So Brody was stabbed at least twice. I don't know. It could have been more than that.
They said he had at least 2 8-inch wounds. On him.
Golly. Yeah, here's a quote about the scene from Dutch Mantel, another wrestler. He said, "Brody's main chest wound had blood that was bubbling, so I figured that his lung had been sliced open. He kept asking Tony to take care of his wife and kids. He knew he was dying, but he could talk. And it took well over an hour to get the ambulance there. I called Miss Goodish and told her that she'd better come a few hours before he died, and that the rumors she heard were true, end quote. He actually didn't call her. What he did was he called the hotel desk clerk and had all of Brody's calls transferred to his room. And so when Miss Goodish finally called to check on Brody, Atlas got the call. I mean, Mantell got the call.
Yeah.
Dutch did. And so that's how he told her, and she actually didn't find out because Dutch didn't tell her over the phone that he had passed or that he'd been stabbed at all. He just said he had an accident. And it's terrible, but she doesn't find out until she gets to the airport and she's walking in and she runs into Abdullah first when she gets off or when she gets to the place. And Abdullah's like, he's gone. He's gone. And that's the first, and it's like, it's kind of ironic, right? Like his nemesis is telling his wife that he's dead.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, but you have to understand, like, it's not really that ironic for Miss Goodish because she totally separated this.
Yeah.
She separated these lives. You know, he wasn't Brody to her.
Yeah, and that's also, you get to really see that it was kayfabe. Like these two men hated each other in the ring, but like the two, like, you know, Frank and Abdullah, I can't remember his real name.
Yeah.
Like they didn't hate each other. They did business together. They had great matches together. They were doing this for the money.
The saddest thing about this, though, is that Brody didn't have to die, even with the stab wounds. The fact that it took an ambulance an hour to get there, and then it took them forever to help him at the hospital. Tony Atlas went with him and went and picked up a doctor and carried him over to Brody so he could see how dire his situation were. At that time, Brody's feet were completely blue.
Yeah.
He said he had no circulation.
He got to that because he talks about how the ambulance, like 45 minutes to get there. Then they take like 10, 15 minutes loading him up because he's too big for these tiny paramedics to pick up. So
Tony Atlas had to carry him.
Yeah, he picks him up, puts him on the stretcher so they can wheel him out.
Yep.
And then as soon as they get to the hospital, he's waiting for a doctor. He's bleeding out on the table. And the doctor says, he's like, my friend has been stabbed. Are you not going to help him? He's like, a stabbing's like a cold down here. He's like, it's not dire.
Right. This one is.
What?
This one is.
It's like, how many stabbings you got in here right now?
Right. Yeah, this one was dire because the lung had been punctured.
The liver as well.
And the liver, exactly. And yeah, it was just the type of care that he got, the speed of the care and all that. And then it was all made even worse because meanwhile the police are at the scene and they're wondering, like, is this just a wrestling thing? Like, is this, are we being filmed secretly? Like, is this all staged or did this really happen?
Yeah. Are they staying in character or are they trying to fill out a police report? Like, what is this? This is when it becomes almost like the boy who cried wolf situation where it's the police, especially even in Puerto Rico, the police don't know whether or not they don't know who to believe. Am I talking to?
And it's freaking weird because when Atlas comes back from the hospital, he walks in and like all the wrestlers are just going about their business. Jose's changed his shirt, which was ripped up from the altercation that he had with Brody. And he's getting ready to go out and promote or whatever the fuck. The other wrestlers are laughing and shit.
They continue with the show.
Yes. And Atlas comes in and fucking throws a chair and he's like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? And the cop comes up to him because the cops are here now, right? They're talking to everybody. They're investigating. And they're like, whoa, you need to calm down. Like, what's going on? And
they ask him, they say, do you need to calm down? Are you the one that saw the fan that stabbed him?
Yeah.
That's what the cop says to him. He's like, you need to calm down. You're the one that saw the fan, right? Can you tell us which fan stabbed him?
And he was like, what have you been told?
He's like, what fucking fan?
Yeah. There was no fan. And here's a quote straight from Atlas. He says, that's the guy you need to fucking arrest right there. And he pointed to Jose Gonzalez. But apparently everyone else went along with the fan theory, knowing damn well that they weren't. But you also got to think, all of these guys rely on these promoters for their livelihood, to provide for their families and whatnot. It's like, they were a bunch of bastards. They didn't speak up or whatnot. It's like they could have ended up the same way. Yeah. They're down here in Puerto Rico in 1980s. This ain't no territory of the U.S.
No.
Not like it matters now.
Yeah. I mean, what that doctor say? A stabbing is like a cold around here. It's like you might just get stabbed around here. Obviously, they stabbed this guy in the locker room with witnesses.
Yeah.
And this is how quickly it turned into, some crazy fan came back here and stabbed him.
Right. And then also, a lot of people like to say, well, and the cops were confused because of the whole wrestling, is it fake? Is it real thing? And I think all of that is bullshit. I can't see that. All the police had to do was walk in the locker room. There's blood on the fucking floor, right?
Yeah, a lot of it.
I get it. They bleed a lot in the matches, but there's blood right in the middle of the floor. And then all you had to do was call the hospital and be like, is this man there? And they would have been like, yeah, stab wound in the lung.
Yeah, chest and stomach.
Yes. And then boom, there you go. But I think it was more so that these promoters, these people in charge, had a lot of pull in that area. They had a lot of money, and they convinced the cops to look the other way.
Very much. That's what I said. There's
at least long enough for Brody to die.
Yeah, this is where it starts looking like this could have been premeditated, because they talk about, like, Atlas and Dutch Mantel talk about when they came into the locker room that first day, that day.
Yeah,
the three of them were kind of sitting in a little huddle, not really talking together, just kind of sitting and looking around.
Yeah, they had been talking.
Yeah,
you could
and
tell.
then that kind of looked kind of suspicious. And Dutch Mantel talks about how tense it felt in the locker room.
Yeah,
when they all got there, kind of like when the Americans got there.
Yeah,
to an extent.
Yeah, I got you. But ultimately, because of Atlas's testimony, Gonzalez was charged with the murder, but was ultimately acquitted, claiming self-defense. And you might think, like, how the hell with Atlas's testimony? Well, for one, Tony Atlas was the only one with that testimony. Mm-hmm. And two, they never invited him to court. He was never subpoenaed into court.
Nope.
Never received it ever. And then Dutch Mantel received his 10 days after the conclusion of the case.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it was already completely over.
Yeah, the witnesses who could have been, like, the eyewitnesses who should have been on the stand, were conveniently not, alerted that the trial was happening.
Right. And then you think, well, God, how can the jury convict this man or not convict this man when he was armed, right? Mm-hmm. He obviously had a knife. But they attribute that to the fact that a lot of the Puerto Ricans believed that Bruiser Brody was Bruiser Brody, right? They thought he was this monster, this madman. And imagine if that man tries to attack you in private.
Yeah.
And that's what Gonzalez's attorney sold them. Mm-hmm. The fact that, Bruiser's a madman. He had to resort to using a knife.
Yeah, we have all of this
footage. Look at what he did to him in the ring,
yeah.
Right? They probably had footage of his face being all beat up and swollen up, looking like a pumpkin from the first time they fought. They probably brought that in and shown, like, look what this man can do. Mm-hmm. And this was not agreed upon or whatever. So I'm not saying Brody brought it upon himself, but I feel like that's probably what the jury was thinking.
Yeah, and at this time, like we talked about with kayfabe, with it being so, like, engrossed and so, like, I don't know, it was impossible to separate the wrestler from the person at this time. So yeah, all the fans thought that these characters were just like madmen that they somehow, like, these wrestling companies found, like, off the street.
Right. Yeah.
They found this, Iron Sheik who's just a Middle Eastern, like,
and look,
royalty.
Why would wrestling promoters deny that? That is better for their business. Mm-hmm. Even if someone died in their sport, if everyone believes he was a monster, a madman, that just ups the fucking ante. That just puts more people in the seats. Now they're like, man, these feuds are real.
Yeah. I mean, you have to understand, like, especially this time back in these days, when wrestling promotions came to town, it was almost like the circus coming to town. You had, like, almost like the freak show. It's like, would you rather people come to this show thinking that that really is a monkey fish hybrid, or would you want people coming to here just wanting to come see how fake it looked? It's like, no, you want people to believe that this is real, and you're going to keep up this illusion to bring more fans in, even though they can look at it and be like, I don't think this can't be real, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just like a traveling circus. You have all these characters that would not be in real, like, in your everyday life.
Right.
You're not going to see Abdullah the Butcher in your everyday life. You're not going to see Macho Man Randy Savage. You're not going to see somebody with this much flair and flamboyancy who's also going to be able to rip your head off. And
right.
So yeah, the idea that the general public and the jury especially were not able to see any, like, footage of Frank Goodish, of, like, talking to his family, to his coworkers, and be like, Frank is not Bruiser. Like, these are two different people. This is a character he plays.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be, like, back then, it would literally be like charging Sean Connery with murder because you said James Bond killed all these people in the movies. And it's like, no, that's a character. He didn't do these crimes. You understand? And so,
But like you said, though, but they were blurring the lines because the violence was real.
Yeah.
You know, the bleeding, the stabbing with forks and hitting with chairs and all this stuff, all that shit was real.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it really did. It blurred the lines in the worst possible way. But Bruiser Brody was given, well, the best funeral that he could have been given. He was cremated in Puerto Rico, and there was a small viewing of his body beforehand, and it was mainly just his wife, his son, and then some other of the wrestlers, really, and some of the local Puerto Ricans who were just fans, who were just sad to see, you know, their hero fall in this fashion,
or their villain. Yeah, it was
or their villain. Either way,
yeah, it was a character that they were not going to see anymore. They were gonna.
Right.
It was like seeing, you know, like when you saw comic books, like the death of Robin or the death of Batman. And it's like these are characters that they felt like were gone, that they were never going to get to experience again. It was like losing someone real to them.
No doubt.
So
no doubt, and he was very real, and the inspiration. Absolutely. And he received an induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, and which is often considered one of the highest honors in the entire industry. I don't know how much better of an honor you can get than that. But his death still, the way it's remembered, I guess, remains very divisive in the wrestling community, which to me, it seems pretty cut and dry. It really does. But old Jose Gonzalez, he's still out here.
yeah,
And actually, I think he's still like promoting himself on Facebook to show up at kids' birthday parties and stuff. Like he's still trying to make money off this Invader One persona.
oh, I believe it.
Even
Yeah, a lot of these, like I said, a lot of the wrestlers from these days, they still have to rely on the character that they played in the 70s and 80s because they physically can't do anything else. They can't go back to wrestling. They can't evolve. They can't go into
Maybe if they
industry.
weren't stabbed in the fork, stabbed with a fork 97 times in the fucking head.
Or just getting thrown off everything and hit with chairs every night and stuff. It's
Choked
these
out
guys,
with chains.
Yeah, these guys could have had a much longer career in other avenues. But yeah, like a lot of these characters, a lot of these wrestlers, they live off of going to conventions as the character they played in the 70s and 80s. So you go to all these wrestling cons and you'll see old ECW and WCW people, and it's like, you haven't seen them do anything else except for, you know, the Sandman character from ECW,
right?
And that's still what they make their money off of.
Well, hey, you got to make it somehow, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is one of those deaths. This is one of those crimes in the wrestling industry that, like the fact that there's a whole series, The Dark Side of the Ring, which covers multiple different horrific things that happen in the wrestling industry.
Yeah.
But the fact that this was like this was a straight up murder in a locker room with wrestlers, by wrestlers, and yet still somehow got, you know, acquitted and kind of brushed off and just kind of disappeared after a little bit. There was no real follow-up investigation.
That's why I wanted to bring attention to this again. It's just like anytime I find a case where the killer's just out living their best life, I'm just like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. Now, I get it. Jose probably lost a lot of cred in the wrestling community, probably lost a lot of opportunities because of this. He should have.
Yeah.
I mean, God, you stabbed a man in cold blood. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no one's going to want you in their locker room.
Exactly. But like I said, they needed him gone, and I'm sure the amount of money that Jose made. Also, it's worth noting that Abdullah the Butcher also owned a part of that company, and he had recently bought in as well. And it's like, they didn't off him. Now, he said he only owned 5%. Yeah. So he's a much smaller stakeholder, I'm sure. I bet Brody bought a much larger percentage, possibly even controlling percentage.
Mm-hmm. He was going to be a minority.
And if he,
But yeah, I think one of the things in the documentary too, they talk about how I think one of the guys owed Brody, I think the promotion down there owed Brody like $20,000 still.
They already owed him that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was going down there. He told somebody, I'm coming back with my money.
Yeah.
So either I'm coming back with part of this company or I'm coming back with my money.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't come back at all. So it was, there was a lot of money on the line, and there was part of this promotion on the line, which would then, end up with more money down the line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Andy, that's the case of Bruiser Brody. That's all there was. He only lived 42 short years.
Mm-hmm. We talked about beforehand, like it was almost disappointing. Just if you just go to Bruiser Brody's Wikipedia page, it's remarkably short.
Yeah.
And we understand this episode wasn't as long as it could have been. We could have, like, there's documentaries that are longer, and you can really dive into all the ins and outs of the industry and the things that happened. But like his life and career and death, like I said, it kind of just got brushed aside, and just the world kept on turning. The promotions kept on like making money, and that the people had to find a new villain or monster. So
that's right. Yeah, they sure did. Well, if you're looking for a new deodorant, I got you. That's for sure.
Oh, you do, Michael?
I do. It's Oh My Gaia, Andy.
Ooh, there we go.
That's right. You guys, if you have not tried Oh My Gaia, you are missing out. Oh My Gaia is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. There is tons of scents to choose from, like vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside. Great fall scent. Bergamot, amber, pear, sweet pea, sailor, barbershop, and of course, don't forget about True Crime Pine, Andy.
You cannot forget about it.
Don't forget about it. You're True Crime listeners. And because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the code word Creepvan. Creepvan, Creepvan. All one word, no spaces. For 15% off your order at ohmygaia.com. That's ohmygaia.com, or at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram. Again, that's code word Creepvan, Creepvan. There's a link right below the description of this episode. It's 15% off. You can't beat it, peeps. The old code word Creeper doesn't work anymore. Okay? So if you're not using the new code word, you're not going to get the discount.
Mm-hmm. You're still creepers. Don't worry.
Yeah, you're still creepers.
Now you just got a van to ride around in.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of van to ride around in, you got to join Patreon.
That's right.
That's the best creep van to ride around in. Patreon.com/TrueCrimeGuys, where you can get early access to these episodes with bonus content. There's no frickin' ads. And they're early, So there you go. Also, you get access to hundreds of other audio files that we have, all the old shows that have gone by the wayside. Strange shorts, just the banter, 5-minute murder with Lorne, all kinds of stuff, guys. Higher thoughts, tons of audio files for your listening pleasure waiting for you on Patreon, patreon.com/truecrimeguys. Also, make sure you check out our other shows, Strange and Unexplained and Cryptic Soup, wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes every Monday and Wednesday. All right, guys. Anything else, Andy?
I don't think so, Michael. I think you nailed it, brother.
All right, brother. We'll see you next week. Bye. With our new True Crime Guys, we forgot to tell them keep creeping, Andy.
Oh, brother, I'm sorry.
Oh, keep creeping.
Bye.